And there was a lot of duplicative work. And I'll never forget one workflow asking a woman why there was a work step that checked the prior step. And she goes, well, I can't trust that they did it right. Oh, that was like a major aha moment for us, major aha moment. And what we uncovered is there was a lack of trust and accountability across the team.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, where we look to crack the code on growing your business by tackling the challenges that keep revenue leaders up at night. I'm Carl Ortmans, and on today's episode, we're going to dive into a topic we actually haven't really covered much here, but it is the topic of operations and strategy. More to come. Today's podcast is sponsored by the great team at Virtual Causeway. Imagine your sales team spending less time chasing and more time closing because buyers already know your name before the first call. Well, that's exactly what Virtual Causeway does. They help B2B companies get found earlier in the buying process by the right people through the right channels that actually influence decisions today. So what's the result? Well, it's fewer cold calls, better conversations, and pipeline that moves faster. You can visit them at virtualcauseway.com, and don't forget to mention the show for a special rate. Now, my guest today is a career operations leader who's figured out that the fastest path to revenue transformation isn't hiring better salespeople, it's fixing how the work actually flows. Welcome, Jennifer Doty. Most people who spend 20 years running operations at a company like MetLife stay in operations, but Jennifer did it differently. She used that as a vantage point to understand something that most sales leaders see from the inside. Where does the revenue actually break down? She's held multiple group vice president roles at MetLife, running client services, broker relationships, product launches, and at one point, she said, a global IT integration. She wasn't managing pipeline. She was managing what happens after the deal and before the next one. Well, that's a different kind of education. After MetLife, she went on her own, advising companies from startups to Fortune 100s on operations and business model transformation. Today, she's a VP of partnerships at 3Flow, a platform rethinking how brokers and carriers place employee benefits, which is, in most companies, still a mess of emails and spreadsheets. She's watched companies try to reinvent their go-to-market strategy by changing what salespeople say, and her diagnosis is different. She thinks the real problem is how the operation around the sale is designed. And until you fix that, you're just training people to run on a faster or broken track. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Carl. So excited to be here.
Me too. This is one where I'm really looking forward to because it is a topic that's so important inside of a business, and it doesn't really get the air coverage or even the topic, maybe the time to talk about the topic that it should. So it'll be fun. So as we get kicked off, maybe share with everybody a little bit about your world. What industries or verticals do you work in? What are the selling motions? What size companies do you work with?
Yeah, thank you so much. So as you said, I spent almost 20 years of my career at MetLife in a variety of roles and ultimately led all of group benefit operations for the US. Prior to that, I was a CPA by trade and by background and spent a lot of time in the finance world. And then currently I work at 3Flow, which is a technology platform, a benefit placement system that allows brokers and carriers in the group insurance space to more effectively exchange data for rating and quoting, the pre-sale part of the process. So I started as a VP of partnerships when I came to 3Flow. And then just 2 years ago, I moved into running customer operations because when you're a glutton for punishment and you can see what needs to be solved and fixed, there is often always a place for me in the operational process workflow world. And so here I am, and this is what I've been doing. In addition to that, I have a portfolio career. I have created another business on the side of my desk, which is called Live Pure. It is a nutrition and supplement company that I'm part of and that I am actively growing. And in addition to that, I do speaking engagements, workshops on coaching and education and training based on my experience that I've had. And how do I help teams and individuals get out of their own way to help drive the outcomes that they're looking for. So a lot of different things. But yeah, super happy to be here and chat with you today.
Yeah, so you don't really do much. I don't know how you have time to do anything with all of that. Holy moly. I thought trying to run a podcast was time consuming. No way. You got way more on your plate. So how we got to today's conversation is I asked Jennifer, just like I ask everybody, what's a successful revenue initiative you led or an existing challenge that you've either solved or currently solving? And we had a really fun back and forth conversation, if you can't tell already. And it was really clear that we had to talk about building an operations strategy with sales. And so maybe we just start it with probably the most basic of questions. However, it's kind of a loaded question. Jennifer, how come this is still a problem? And how come this problem still continues to exist today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it boils down to you got to start with the leadership, right? And does the leadership understand and identify with what happens on both sides of the fence, right? And so there's a sales process, and then you have to implement that sale, whatever that means to you, whatever industry you're in. And then there's a lot of downstream workflows that happen from there that really result in a customer experience that you want to be amazing. You want your customers to want to leverage your product or your platform or your service above all other opportunities or competitors that are out there, right? And I think it starts with really having that education and understanding on both sides. So that includes, does the operational leader and do enough of the right levels tiers within the organization? I mean, ultimately at every seat, people understand what's happening on the sales side, right? What are the obstacles for the sales team as they try to grow the pipeline and try to increase revenue and sales, right? And what are they trying to solve for? And then on the flip side, the sales organization needs to understand, once they've sold it, what are the downstream impacts of what they've sold? And this has been the bane of my existence since was a wee young woman in operations, right? Can I deliver what the salesperson sold? And there's a lot of opportunity around that, and making sure if you've got a good understanding and, most importantly, trust, right? You can operate more in the fringe around the things that are not standard, around the things that aren't typical or perfect, right? And once you have that trust, you can work together to deliver, in a more effective way.
Yeah. So I really like what you say there, because there is the question, like, salespeople are going to go sell something and they go, well, I told the customer. And so you kind of got to figure it out. Right. And I've seen that happen many times of, well, I sold this. Well, now you got to deliver it. Well, actually what you just sold, we actually can't
Do it.
do. So
Right.
we need to fix it. So if we can go back to this part, when you started to rebuild the strategy with sales, because I'm thinking about it in this way. Sales teams are going to look at it from a customer experience and they're going to go, well, what's the fastest path to closing a sale? Just as an example. And so I'm going to do sales training. We're going to have our own process. We're going to implement it. We're going to go. Where does operations actually come into aligning with that strategy? Have you looked at this from, hey, look, when you go and produce your sales strategy or your entire customer workflow or the customer journey, operations, we actually want to sit in the room and listen and hear. How
Yes.
do you connect those two worlds together so it's one seamless process for the customer and they see no friction between anything other than, this is what you said,
Yeah.
this is what you did, and because operations is effectively the do what sales said they're going to do.
Exactly. So it all starts with planning. And I did it at MetLife, and I do it today in my day job with 3Flow, right? And I do it in planning for next year, but I do it in our day-to-day. Things change, right? And strategies change, and sales tactics change depending on, are you behind target or are you at target, right? Like, so things change across the year, but it's sitting down together and having a plan, right? And so that includes understanding, what are the sales goals? Where are they coming from? Right? What accounts are they coming from? Like in my world today, it's what brokers are they coming from? What new brokers, what existing brokers, right? And then understanding, what are the levers that I have in operations to make that go really, really well? Because the last thing you want to do is sell something and then lose it, right? And so it doesn't matter what industry you're in. When you're in insurance, it's all about persistency and retaining the business. it's no different in any other industry, right? Whether you want to retain the customer or retain the account, right? You have to have a really good experience. And so what I do is I sit down and I say, okay, these are your top accounts that you're either going to grow or expand, and then you're going to go get some new ones, right? What are the things that operations can deliver to help make that true? In addition, are there any value added benefits that operations can help create that will actually help bolster your value proposition to that customer, right? And then managing that process as you get into the day to day, right? And so I was just meeting with one of my team members today, and we're thinking about like, how can we help support the sales team? What are the types of things that we can do? And we were brainstorming some ideas around helping create a view of broker account management and broker insights that would be super valuable from an operational perspective, that provides more details that they have with other vendors that they might partner with, right? And now with AI, you can leverage a lot of things, right? And you can put a lot of information into Claude and say, can you give me a health, a view, a health of this broker on whatever time period you're looking for, and then dig into those details and insights, right? And so we're doing a lot of work around that now, and it really helps the sales team see you as a partner, not just the person on the other side of the wall they throw things to, right? Because I've been in that kind of organization as well.
Okay. I love it because it's funny to me because I'm laughing going, okay, I've been in those points of like, they'll figure it out there.
Yeah, they'll figure it out.
Yeah. On the operations side, let's maybe sort of like hone in a little bit, because there's operations from like thinking like, because I've had people on the podcast who are in manufacturing, and operations in manufacturing means something very different. There's sales operations, there's revenue operations, there's marketing operations, there's all kinds of operations. So when we're having this conversation, what lens are you bringing this from? Is it a sales operations, a marketing operations? Is it truly like the ink is
true delivery? It's true delivery of the service. In my world today, it's of the platform. So basically, we sell the opportunity to work on our platform and transact business on our platform. And then a broker says, okay, cool, I'm going to sign up for that. And then we implement that broker and we get the leaders on board. But then you have to get the users on board, right? And then they go about transacting business, right? And so it's about, how do we help support that relationship on how the broker is transacting business on a day-to-day basis, right? So that includes the level of accuracy that we provide, the speed of which that we can reply with questions, or, things that don't always work out perfectly, or, it's not cookie cutter. And so, it can't be necessarily automated. And so people have to touch, you got to get somebody in there to touch something that gets kicked out. So it's truly how we support the delivery of the 3Flow platform.
Okay, perfect. And I want to make sure that we sort of hone in on it, because I could already imagine somebody being like, well, I'm in RevOps and I think of it this way. And I'm in marketing ops, or I'm in like true operations and I'm thinking about either way, but the delivery aspect is so important. And if you've ever seen like Winning by Design, I don't know if you know their model, they call it the bow tie model. So it's, they look at it as a double funnel, right? Because there's that friction point, the potential friction point in the middle. Sales goes through their funnel, they close it, and now it's on for the delivery side. And it's like, can we actually grow and expand and deliver and do all the things for that customer? So my question, maybe to go back to it, is I think you said a little bit of the planning, and how do we get them across together? In your experience, do you try to bring one centralized, maybe centralized, or one common methodology from lead to delivery and renewal and everything in between, similar to the bow tie model? Or how do you get the two totally different groups to align on a methodology and a strategy that takes that customer all the way through the journey, that the sales team operates, they run through their sales process, everything, operations picks it up and says, great, we got you from here and we're going to build on and continue to operate and grow, and now you're up and running and you're carried on. How does that conversation sound, and how do you get everybody aligned to bring one common theme across the board?
Yeah. So the finance person in me loves this question because it's all about the revenue model, right?
Hmm.
It all boils down to how much money are you going to earn and will you get paid on those sales? Will you get paid on it? Are you going to make money on the thing that you're doing? Right. And so I take a sales model and I look at the nuances of like, who is it? And like what accounts is it and the timing of it. Right. And so it's all those different factors. It's like, what are you bringing in? Who are you bringing in? When are you bringing them in? And then what is the volume of what you're bringing in? Right. And
Hmm.
so from an operational perspective, I translate that volume from sales into what's the widget of work than for my team, right? And so in our world, we do a lot based on coverages, right? That's the widget of work that gets transacted through the platform, right? And so there's a lot of assumptions. Nothing is perfect, but you just align across teams on these are my assumptions. Does that align with with what you're thinking, with what I'm thinking, right? And then we create estimates off that. And then from there, we do the trade-offs and choices of like, well, I can do this, or I can do this, or I can do this, or I can do this, right? And we boil it down to what's most important and make sure that we can absolutely execute on the bare minimum that we need to be successful.
What it makes it sound like to me is you just effectively explained building an annual plan as a leadership team, not in silos.
Mhm. Correct. And we have the same conversation with product and engineering because I have to make sure a lot of what my team does is around the fringes of what's delivered in the actual platform from a capability standpoint.
Hmm.
So if something is delayed or something is delivered in an MVP, minimum viable product fashion, but it's not fully all built into the product, the fringe work is what my team manages, right? Because to the customer or the user, you want to make it look like the platform is delivering all the things that you've witnessed and promised, right? And so we all know there's things that don't go in as perfectly as planned for a lot of different reasons, right? And so that's where my team comes in and, basically supports the product delivery, right? In what they're delivering and how they're delivering it from an operational standpoint.
Hmm. When you made this aha, because I'm hearing you talk about it, and I'm thinking, okay, there had to have been an aha moment for you to go, hold on a second, we're not talking the same language. We need to get people talking together. What was that aha moment for you, and how did you link the problem statement together to bring the right people to the room to even start this conversation?
Yeah. It's really great because it started with our head of sales. He's phenomenal. And he wrote it really was like a stream of consciousness, right? On all the things that he thought needed to be true in order to achieve the sales plan, right? And it's more than numbers. Like it's a lot more than numbers. There's a lot more storytelling to it, right? And so I took that document, right? And so as he created this document, I was like, if it's in this dissertation, I called it his dissertation because it was sort of that long. And I'll never forget, I read it over a cup of coffee one morning and I sat here with my highlighter and I said, every time there's something that my team's going to have to touch or worry about that as a risk, I'm highlighting it, right? And I knew, Carl, if I captured all of those risks and all of the work that was on the page, and I had a plan for how I could deliver it, we were good. And so I called him and I'm like, I think I have figured out how to align the planets on how to make sure we can support this sales plan. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the aha moment for me, to really just take that and put his plan into my practice. Right. Because I've seen so many times in prior lives, right? Sometimes in bigger companies, sometimes operations does not report to the person that the head of sales reports to. And
Right.
you have very different objectives and very different goals. And that is really hard. I have the benefit of being at a small company. We all work for the same cause, the same plan, the same targets. There's no competing priorities, right? That's like a whole nother show that we could do, Carl. But it's really helpful when you're on the same page. When my goal is to hit revenue and his goal is to hit revenue, it really is fairly simple to lay out what needs to be done to make that true.
And I think there's the common theme right there is you just said the common goal. It's revenue.
Yes.
You're not looking at
Yes.
different things, right? You're not
Correct.
looking at from, hey, look, I'm looking at it from a CSAT perspective. You're looking at it from revenue. And if you look at it from two different
And I've
perspectives.
been there in those worlds. Or how about from a cost perspective? How about cut $10 million out of your organization because I need you to? And
How
you
did
got
that
to
go?
hold your metrics to, flat.
Okay.
It's hard.
So how did that go when you had to actually look at it? Did you have to redo an entire budget with the team, like, or is it just?
Yeah, entire budget. I mean, that was definitely navigating landmines politically and personally and professionally and all things considered, because when I had to do that and I was at MetLife, I had to hit my savings target and I couldn't break the business. And so I had to align where were the places that I could save that wasn't going to break the business. And really start to think about, okay, well, what options do I have? Okay. So, and it was people. I mean, this is, 1,000 people that reported to me that I had to work through, right? So the majority of my cost was not technology or spending necessarily in other buckets. It was really people related. So my levers were, could I outsource more and do labor arbitrage and spend less money? Could I relocate people and just do a relocation strategy to a lower cost part of the country and save money that way? Could I mean, back in those days, it was robotics. AI wasn't even on anybody's radar yet. Could I leverage robotics in a way that would automate certain parts of the process? Or even better yet, could I eliminate things? Could I say there were things that we were going to stop doing? And here's why, right? And so thinking through all those different opportunities and making sure that my role was save the money, don't break the business, making sure I could comfortably voice the concern around if I couldn't hit the $10 million, why I couldn't hit the $10 million as an example, and the nature of that, and then work through the politics to get the right people to help me go to bat to make sure I didn't have to cut costs where it would hurt too much.
There's a lot of planning and strategy that goes into even just trying to do that. And I can only imagine the level of detail that you had to get into of, we need to save 10 million. Here's how we're going to do it. This is my contingency plan. Here's what's going to happen next. Oh, and hey, by the way, I don't know how this conversation sounded, but oh, by the way, sales team, you're familiar with doing this process. That changes now. It goes to this process, which is effectively a lot of change management. And I think there's a question that I should be asking you here is, there is a major change management component that happens when you start to do any of these operational changes or the strategy changes. And so when you went back to that moment, what did that operational change management look like once you came to the conclusion of this is the path, everybody signed off on, go? Yeah.
So it was definitely a combination of people, process, and technology impacts, right? And so to your point, once we got to, you think the hard part is getting to a plan. That's not the hard part, Carl. The hard part is always execution because there's people involved, right? And so you have to start with your leadership team and then getting them on the boat with you. Can they get on the bus and sign up for what we're doing on the bus? You got it. Because if you don't, when you're dealing with this many people, right, you got to get your leadership, whether they like it or not. Can they get on the bus, right? You don't have to like it, but can you be on the bus with me? Because if you can't, well, that's a whole different conversation, right? And so you start there with alignment on this is what we need to do and this is why we need to do it. Do you understand? And can you get behind that? And can you advocate for that? outside of this room. You can say whatever you want inside this room, but when you walk out, are we all going to say we're on board? Okay, cool. You get past that. And then you put together with that team, with your team of the next level of leaders, because those are the ones that are going to execute. It's not me in my office personally executing all these different work streams, right? I needed people to like help make it true, right? And so then working with your next level of leaders to put the plan in place. I had HR at every single meeting, one of the best HR partners I ever worked with. And she helped navigate a lot of the people changes and the timing around the people changes, because not only did we need to eliminate jobs, we needed to hire for different jobs. So there was like a lot of reorganization conversation that needed to happen, right? And then once we've laid out on paper, this is what we're going to do, and this is the sequencing of how it works, then it's the question of, well, how are we going to roll it out?
Right.
And how are we going to be successful in how we roll it out? And you can do that a variety of different ways, right? You can do it based on your book of business. You could do it geographically. You could do it based on work stream. We had a bunch of different ways that we did it, but I'm a big believer when you have hundreds of people who work for you, I'm a big believer in being as transparent as possible as soon as you can in the process, right? And so the sooner everybody knows what's going on, the better off everyone's going to be, even if it's hard work, right? Because you don't want people to be making up stories in their head of what's going to happen.
Yeah. The story I'm telling myself is a very dangerous position to be in, especially when you don't have the context or the insights. And actually, Andrew Quinn, who helped build the sales enablement, or actually it wasn't, he called it something different as he went in, but he at HubSpot, he worked with Mark Roberge and with the leadership team. But anyways, as he was talking to me about this, he said, one of the problems with delivery is that everybody finds out at the same time. And so when reps look to their manager and the manager's like, I found out the same time you did, and the manager goes to the director and the director's like, I found out, and then it's the cascading effect. And that's where that, I say it at the end of the conversation or at of the podcast, but it's when everybody likes new, nobody likes different. And when you do both at the same time, it can cause friction or uncertainty. And that is the problem statement when you try to do any sort of change management. You don't give that cascading effect. And I'm also thinking there's two things that come to mind as you're talking about this. The one is when you start making these changes, there's one option, as a RevOps person likes to say, is I just turn stuff off and see if people freak out. And if they don't, then I know it's not worth it. But if they do freak out, then I have clarity of like, well, how do you use it? What do you use it? And they give me the information that I need to look at. The other thing is maybe to ask you is when you start to make these changes, there's somebody who's on the podcast, and I don't want to speak out of turn because I can't fully remember who it was. But we talked to, he said something like, attach yourself to an invoice and follow the bouncing ball. At any point, did you use that sort of common theme to create that strategy end to end of like, you follow you attach yourself to an invoice and you saw exactly where it went to find the friction points to say, hey, head of sales, I read your dissertation. And by the way, here are the break points that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, I definitely did that when we transformed the service organization at MetLife. We took all of the workflows from the start of the sales process all the way until a claim was received and paid, or a bill was sent to an employer group. And we went through we broke down every single one of the workflows in a workshop in person, like back in the day, in real life, you sat together and we literally had workflows on a wall. And I would get the person who led that current workflow to talk about what they did and the current state of the workflow and what the pain points were. And we'd color code or star all the pain points. And then I'd ask them, well, why is that a pain point? And they'd explain the process, right? And one of the things I uncovered as we did this is there was a lot of duplicative work. And there was a lot of, because again, I wasn't like in the weeds. So it was good to have me and some of the other leadership there to like watch real time, like, oh, this is how this process actually works. And this is the life cycle of a policy, right? Like through the journey. And there was a lot of duplicative work. And I'll never forget one workflow asking a woman why there was a work step that checked the prior step. And she goes, well, I can't trust that they did it right.
Oh,
that was like a major aha moment for us. Major aha moment. And what we uncovered is there was a lack of trust and accountability across the team. No one trusted that the person before them was going to do the job they needed to do. So they needed to follow up 40 times. And we wondered why things took so long. And so then the aha moment, after that moment, we realized we needed to do an accountability training as part of this rollout of this new transformation and sit people down and talk about what does accountability mean to you? And do you feel accountable? Do you think your peer is accountable? I mean, it was a real reflective self-development type of conversation, because part of our problem was people didn't trust each other.
That's a great example to go back to, because as you change, you make change for a bunch of reasons, but that's a great example of like, okay, I did that. Now, taking it from there, like how did you change that? Was it truly just retraining people? Was it, hey, going back, I don't know if the two stories are connected, but like saving that 10 million and looking at the accountability chart and saying, am I following it properly?
Yeah, no. Yeah, it was all part of one and the same. I mean, we took it back, and it was really mindset work that the team needed to do, right? And I had to stand up in front of a lot of rooms and say, I understand you've had a lot of leaders before me. And I understand that, people have come and go, and you just think I'm the latest person here rolling out the latest thing. And I know you all tell me you don't like the way it currently works. I know you all tell me it's too hard. And what we're trying to offer you is a different way that's going to be better. And so I'm asking for you to give me 30 days in this rollout. And if we get to the end of 30 days and this doesn't feel just a little bit better, I expect that you're calling me because I want to know why. And so I put my personal integrity and commitment on the line to say, I know this is uncomfortable, what we're asking you to do, but I'm committed to you to make it better. And if what we're doing doesn't make it better, we will do it differently. We will change what we're doing.
Right.
And that's when the tide started to shift. Because once people understood that everyone was going to be held accountable, everybody was responsible for what they needed to do. Everybody shows up to work every day, Carl, with positive intent. I assume you're going to do your job instead of what I thought about you yesterday. You'd be amazed at how things felt differently across the team.
Right. Okay, so I really like how you called this out, because there's the intent is a key thing. But as you went through it, did you have milestones that you were there? Like, what was that when you rolled it out? Because it is that new and different. But what were the milestones, or what were the markers that you said, hey, by the way, we're going to try to get to here at this point? So then there is clear, like you said, transparency of what the goal was. And so people could see either, hey, we're on track, or we're off track.
Yeah. So it was two things. There were a lot of metrics. So there were a lot of metrics about moving people. Have we moved people in the right roles? Have we transferred books of business to the right people? Have the new workflows been stood up? So a lot of metrics on the what, right? But then we also really focused on the how, which is how did it feel? Right. And so we did a bunch of like sentiment surveys on a periodic basis that I work with HR on sending out. Right. And so we did surveys before we rolled out the new model, during the model, and then 90 days into the model. Right. And we really asked people a bunch of questions like, do you feel like you know what your job is? Do you feel like you know what you're accountable for? Do you feel like you're supported, right? Do you feel like, you understand what success looks like? Does this feel better than it did 6 months ago? Yes or no? And we really paid attention, as well as day to day. We did this thing called Huddles, right? And so it was part of rolling out this new accountability model is we did daily huddles. And so each team would huddle for 15 minutes. And the manager would go around and be like, from a capacity standpoint, like, how are you, Carl? Right. And everybody had to like pick a smiley face for the day, right? Were you like, good, okay, or like dying, right? And so it gave people the opportunity, like, if you need help, speak up. Like, don't hide under a rock. Like, if you're having a hard time, this is your opportunity to ask for help, and you get credit when you ask for help, right? And so it really helped get underneath how people were feeling around the changes, so that way we could nip issues in the bud around behavior, if there was. I mean, some of the biggest naysayers were the people who hated the existing model, but guess what? They loved to hate the one they had, and they didn't want to change it. And I'm like, what am I going to do with those people? Right. And so we needed to make sure that like the well wasn't being poisoned as we went through it. And we did really well at, getting people on board. And, I always believe when there's someone who tells you it's not going to work, I can't fix it. Well, guess what? You just signed yourself up to lead a team.
That's hilarious. I love that you call it huddle. So my background, I don't know how much but I played football for the majority of my career, and that was my thing. And I love the analogy of huddle. And one of my close friends, Angus Reed, he wrote a book on our offensive line coach called Thank You Coach. But he's done talks, and we talk about the huddle, because the huddle is, if you've never played football, and the huddle is a thing where you come in and there's real talk happening in a very finite amount of time. Like you have in Canada, you have 25 seconds. In the US, sometimes you have 45. Like you have different time frame. So you have to translate and transform a huge amount of conversation in a very short period of time. And you got to be fully present with your mind, with your body, and with your actions. And you got to be like, knock it off. We got to do this. But it allows for that moment, right? So you go into it and you've got to be fully focused, because when that you say break, whatever happens, that's what you're doing. You are going and you are fully aligned and you're carrying on. So I love that you said it in that way, because it does give people the ability to express themselves and know, look, this is the thing. We're going to be focused. We're going to do it. And then we're going to break and we're going to carry on. And a lot of times I actually call it a huddle, so people know, look, be yourself. Be yourself. Let's talk about it. If it's uncomfortable, we're going to go through it. But at the end of this, like you said, can you advocate for this?
Yeah. The other thing I've seen in my career in leadership, people really want to be seen. And so it gave people the opportunity to be seen. And it wasn't always about the hard stuff. I mean, we worked on the hard stuff, but it was also like celebrating great things that happened. Somebody got like an amazing accolade, an email from a broker that went to a sales rep about how much they loved their account manager, right? Like it was celebrating things along the way and recognizing people, right? And so I find even in my day-to-day job today, when people in this virtual world, my gosh, it's hard to see people. You're not seeing people most of the day, right? Unless they're doing this with you, right? Like, and they want to feel seen. Right. And so those huddles gave people an opportunity for people to see them.
Which is the most important thing, because people go to work, like you said, I'm going to come to do my best, but I also want to know that I'm being seen and recognized. Now, there's some people that are like, look, I'm going to fly so far under the radar. I'm just going to go and do my thing. But as you said, you have a problem with it. Guess what? You're now leading it, because if you have this much conviction, you're going to be the one to carry it across, and you're going to be the one to tell us the yes or the no.
Yeah. And I remember in the new model we rolled out, there was nowhere to hide anymore. There used to be places to hide in the old model. And I called it like alligator arms, right? You sort of did enough, but not more than was needed. And no one ever really knew, because the accountability didn't go far enough down in the organization. And so we changed all that. And so there was nowhere to hide, because we had not just team metrics, but we had personal metrics. And so we could track, what was people's inventory and volume and workflow and turnaround times. And not everyone loved that. Not everyone loved that, right? I've learned in the last couple of months at 3Flow, we talk about a driver versus a passenger mentality as an associate. And, we're now at a moment where we need all drivers. There's no room for passengers anymore, right? And so I think, in that my prior life, passengers got really comfortable, really easy before we changed that new model and transformed the service model, right? And we moved into a world where everyone had to drive. You had to drive.
Hmm. How did you distinguish when you say driver versus passengers? So I'm not making stuff up my own. A driver, like I'm going to be leading and be following and going to be pushing, and a passenger is just sitting like I'm just going along for the ride and I'm going to do what I'm told. I'm going to carry it. Is that how you just made the distinction?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, drivers see what needs to be done and do it. And passengers wait to be told.
Hmm.
Passengers, aren't looking for how to do a better job tomorrow. They're just looking to do the job. What's my job? I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Kind of thing. And drivers are really looking to improve, drive change, make things better, see what needs to be done, whether it's your job or not. Could you do it?
Right. Yeah. So the passengers are the ones that go, not my job.
Not my
It's
job.
yeah. Yeah. And the drivers are obviously going to be the change managers, which
Yeah.
is really, and I like how you call that out. And also, as you're building those strategies, I have to think when you had to make that $10 million cut, when you rolled this strategy out, there were people that were like, hey, Jennifer, you know what? I didn't sign up for this. I don't want it. I'm out. And did it
Totally
actually
fine.
bring, yeah. Did you see that happen? Or were there still people that were like, they resisted the change and say, look, you can tell me to do this, but I'm not doing it. And that made your decision a little bit easier on how to
Yeah.
move this.
I mean, there were a couple of people in the beginning who were like that. I mean, they quickly got on board because they
Mhm.
realized we weren't budging. And if they didn't get on board, there was another option and we didn't need you anymore.
Uh,
So we made it quite clear that this was the plan. And if you didn't like this plan, we'd help try to find you another role.
yeah, that's
But we
eh,
didn't really, it wasn't an ask. It was this is what you're gonna do, or you can choose to leave. And
yeah,
we'll be okay with that.
yeah.
I mean, there
And
were on the flip side, there were a lot of people who were like, sign me up. I've been waiting for this. Like, yeah, right. So like that worked out well too, right? Because I think as you change and there's space, right? There I had a
Mhm.
leader who always said to me, take your space. When there's a void and there's a gap and there's an opportunity and there's something new, fill the space. Right.
Hmm,
And so there were a lot of people who stepped up and filled the space, which is incredible to see as a leader.
that's awesome. So after the 38, because I just looked at the time, like I told you got to get out of here because you've got more important things to do
Oh, good.
for tomorrow. Um, as you started to go through it, and did you do like a weekly check-in? Did you do a after the 30 days? How did the communication of the strategy rollout go? And then
Yeah.
once that 30 days happened, was it like, hey Jennifer, like we got this, like you don't have to meet us anymore, like we're good, we trust you.
Yeah. So back when we rolled out the new service model, we did it by region and we would kick each region off with a training session, which was an in person, like 3-day training session. And so I had my leaders join every single rollout. So by the time we got to the last region, those leaders were already starting to move, right? I'll never forget with the service model, my service leader, she's like, I got this, I'm going to go. And I'm like, okay, like, cause we were very methodical about
Mhm.
how we were moving teams and blocks of business because we didn't want to overwhelm the team or sales. So
Right.
we didn't we did it within 12 months, but we didn't go any much faster than that because we wanted to make sure we got each region set up for success, right?
Right.
And so, but once we got them up and running, they adapted the plan, the rollout plan or the maintenance mode, I like to call it, right? They adapted that to what worked best for them, and that was okay. I mean, there were certain things they're like, no, you got to keep at least 3 huddles a week, right? But they might have
Mhm.
moved away from daily huddles, right? And that
Right.
was fine as long as their metrics were fine and their people were fine. I was like, that's okay.
Yeah. It's great. And now you've got everybody on the bus and they're effectively driving the bus for you, or I would not say for you, but with you.
Yes.
Which is great. Okay, so let's move into wrap up and get you out of here because I think I could talk to you for hours and hours.
So,
And maybe, and hopefully there's the second one. At the end
yes.
of every conversation I ask, everybody likes new, nobody likes different, and doing both at the same time can cause friction or uncertainty. So for somebody thinking about leveling up, how they can improve their operations and sales strategy, or even just that relationship, what are 2 or 3 actionable things you can tell them to do on Monday morning so that they can get kickstarted on the right foot?
Develop an amazing partnership with your sales or operational counterpart. Meet with them, have a cup of coffee with them once a week. I meet with my sales leader usually once a week, and we usually just sit and drink a cup of coffee and talk most of the time. Sometimes we're solving for world peace, other times we're not. But develop a real trusted relationship with your counterpart so that you understand what they worry about and that you can read them in
Mm,
a meeting or read them in a Slack message or read them when they raise a concern. Because the faster that the two of you are a joint partnership, there's a lot less noise. When your sales, so speaking as an operational leader, as long as my sales leader knows I always have his back, he never needs to worry. And as long as I know that he always has positive intent with everything he's doing, he's not looking to blow my team up. He's got people on his team who know enough about operations to speed bump them when they need to be speed bumped. And they'll come over and they'll be like, do you know that blah, 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 blah has this proposal out there? And I'm like, no, but tell me more, right? So as long as you've got that relationship, things will go far smoother for you
mm. That's
as you
awesome.
plan and you go through the day to day. Yeah.
So the 2 things I kind of took out of that was understand their world, like sit in their shoes almost. Like it
Yeah.
kind of sounds like you're doing that. And then the second one is separate the signal from the noise.
Mhm.
So those are 2 really great points to share. So this has been awesome, Jennifer. So if people want to talk to you a little bit more, they say, hey, you know what, I want to see what's going on. Where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can also find me on my website, jenniferdoty.com. You can contact me there.
Awesome. Well, today's been, Jennifer and I we have never met. We've only had we had a very short conversation in this. You have such great energy and excitement. And, I could certainly see how working in your team and working for you is, you will always bring the best to your team and you'll always give them the great energy to go and do their best. And that's the thing that I kind of take away from today and finding those details to make the customer better, also making your team better and giving everybody the right space to be successful is certainly what I take away from this. So I really appreciate you doing this with me.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome. Well, that's going to wrap up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast. Obviously, want to thank you, Jennifer, for sharing these incredibly valuable insights. There's some strategy you can put into action tomorrow. Remember, success leaves clues and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, it's Carl with the Revenue Problem Solvers, helping you turn your obstacles into your opportunities. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next time.